Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning into Myth Brigade. My name is Jason, and I'll be your host for another episode of Rules Bites. In this episode, we're going to continue our coverage of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition by taking a look at religion. Exciting, huh? Right. Before we get started though, I wanted to take a second and clear some housekeeping items. First, I wanted to thank all of you who have subscribed to the channel. It's been really awesome watching everything grow over the last couple of months, and we couldn't have done it without you. We're particularly thankful for those who have taken the time to provide feedback and comments on Twitter or directly through email. Your feedback really helps us understand what you're getting out of the channel and the kinds of things that we should be focusing on in future episodes. If you haven't subscribed yet, there's actually a button at the bottom of your user interface that can help you solve that problem. There's also a bell there that will magically allow you to stay up to date with all of the RPG goodness that we get ourselves up to here on Myth Brigade. That includes live streams, product demos, rules bites, and all kinds of other stuff. Lastly, I know it's been a while since we've actually posted an episode of Rules Bites. I do apologize. We had a little bit of a traffic jam between the Tides of Nurgle, our cult campaign, our Call of Cthulhu campaign, and this little thing that we're booting up for Savage Worlds. All of those things together, combined with jobs and bands and short film projects and other things, it got real bad. The good news is we're all caught up and ready to get the show back on the road. So, without further ado, let's talk religion. Like a lot of fantasy settings, the world of Warhammer Fantasy is a polytheistic one. That is to say that the world's peoples recognize and worship numerous gods, each having dominion over one or more core concerns or spheres. You can think of spheres sort of like god hobbies or a god job or something like that. In the Empire, the Pantheon of gods is actually split into three major categories: the old gods, the classical gods, and the provincial gods. Then, of course, there's Sigmar. We'll talk about him later. The old gods have been around since a time when the Empire was populated mainly by roving bands of barbarians. These are Ulrich, god of war; Tal, god of nature; Riz, god of fertility; Manon, goddess of the sea; and of course our favorite, Mor, god of death. In many cases, the barbarian tribes actually align themselves with a particular god, taking on behaviors, colors, iconography, and all that sort of thing as part of their worship. For many across the Empire, the old gods represent the true powers in the world, the classical gods being regarded as relative newcomers. These are Verena, god of wisdom; Myrmidia, goddess of strategy; Shalia, goddess of mercy; and Renald, god of trickery. Cain, god of murder, lurks in the periphery, but there aren't a lot of people traipsing around professing to be his followers. It's probably because they're doing the murder. The provincial gods vary widely and are generally aligned with provinces, towns, forests, lakes, rivers, and even crafts. Their worship is typically limited to smaller, isolated cults who weave folk tales and local legend into their practice. Only Handrik, the god of trade, has actually earned a place in popular worship. And this is thanks to ever-increasing trade and his appeal to merchant types. For example, Unter Wagner of the Tides of Nurgle campaign is in fact a devout follower of Handrik. And pot pies and turkey and blueberry pie, stuffing and cakes. Probably like some potatoes, minced meat, pumpkin, donuts, pastries in general. Now keep in mind that it's actually quite common for the folk of the world to pray to or give offering to multiple gods in the Pantheon. For example, perhaps a family is beset by some horrible disease. They may pray to Shalia for mercy and healing. A soldier headed off to battle may burn an offering to Ulrich in hopes that he will return triumphant. A swarthy sailor might actually give offering to Manon for smooth seas on his journey. Then there's Sigmar. Sigmar was actually a barbarian king, and he pretty much founded the Empire. He's quite a heroic saga behind his namesake. Toward the end of his rule, however, the aging barbarian marched off to a place called Galmaraz, planning to return his super-duper enchanted warhammer to the dwarves that made it. seriously, it was pretty cool. It's just lightning and light. Yeah. It was pretty impressive. Sigmar never returned from his journey, though, and after a while, like in any missing persons case, oracles and prophets assumed that he had ascended to godhood. The cult of Sigmar grew very quickly, and these days is starting to eclipse the more traditional religions in terms of both popularity and power. It's said that the Grand Theogenes, which is sort of like the Sigmar Pope, actually has more power than the Emperor himself. The old world of Warhammer is a massive and very well-developed one. Certainly other races and cultures have their own religions and faiths. We're not going to cover those here, but we have put some links in the description below that will help you find more resources around these topics if you should need them for your campaign. This wouldn't be a Myth Brigade episode if we didn't say something about the wicked, nasty, evil thing that is chaos. So in the darkest and most vile recesses of the old world, the wicked give themselves to Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh. These are the ruinous powers of chaos. Typically, player characters don't worship them, at least not at first. Through corruption, of course, you may wind up being a follower of one of these gnarly gods, but usually not very well advised to go around professing your faith. As such, we're not going to dive any deeper there. Just keep in mind that they're out there, they're super evil. Yeah, it's bad. Every religion recognizes one or more holy places across the old world. These could be the site of a great religious battle or a struggle for the faith. In some cases, the followers of that religion may believe their god actually visited that place at one time or another. The major ones are typically protected by large temples or other holy fortifications, but some may just be simple shrines or chapels on the countryside. Now, I bring this up so that we can talk about an optional rule provided in 4th edition called Little Prayers. This optional rule says that if a faithful player character visits a holy site and gives the appropriate offering, there's an ever so slight chance that some benefit may be received from the deity in question. So in these situations, the game master should make a secret check, and only on the roll of a natural 1, the god hears the character's pleas. Now, you should avoid making this the fulfillment of a specific wish, but instead find a more mysterious and story-driving way for the god to intervene. The Warhammer Fantasy 4th edition core rulebook provides an awful lot of details on each of the gods' cults, so I've purposefully not gone into any detail here. You'll find what you're looking for on pages 204 to 216. That's the profile for each cult, along with some information on its typical worshippers, holy sites, penances, and all the strictures or rules that followers are expected to adhere to. As always, the GM should feel to modify these in any way necessary to make it fit seamlessly into the campaign, but for the most part, you have all the bones you're going to need to make it easy. Now that we have a general sense of how religion is organized, let's take a look at the Blessed. The Blessed are a special lot who have the ability to commune with their god or goddess, even invoking his or her will in the form of blessings or miracles. In the game mechanic, this is actually driven by 2 talents. Bless, which allows the character to impart blessings, and Invoke, which allows for much more powerful miracles. Both blessings and miracles are prayers that are recited by the Blessed, but infused with the power of a god. If a character has the right talent, he or she can actually manifest a blessing or a miracle by making a challenging pray test. Success yields the effect described in the core rules, with each success level yielding bonus results. Failure simply means the character was unable to summon his or her deity, and however heartfelt, the prayer went unheard. A fumbling failure, however, requires the character to roll on the Wrath of the Gods table on page 218. The effects here are not unlike those on the Oops table. Some are bearable, while others make clear the god's displeasure. Now keep in mind that you do have to be able to speak in order to invoke blessings or miracles. Also, only one of a particular blessing or miracle can be effect at a given time. So a blessing that gives a +10 bonus to dexterity, for example, cannot stack to create +20, +30, and +40. No matter how many times the Blessed invokes that particular effect, the character only receives +10. As with all things Warhammer, there is a bit of a downside to being one of the Blessed. Blessed characters can earn sin points if they do not act in accordance with their faith. Sin is kept as a running total over time, and as the sin total gets higher, the blessed character runs the risk of stirring the wrath of his or her god. So, anytime a blessed character makes a pray test, if the roll is equal to or less than the current sin total, that character has to make a roll on the Wrath of God's table just as if they'd fumbled. This would be the case even if the roll was successful. So, the more sin you accrue, the easier it is to piss off your god. Thankfully, blessed characters can remove sin points by strictly observing the tenets of their faith, completing acts of atonement, significant tithing, that sort of thing. These actions, combined with a successful pray test, actually allow the character to remove one or more sin points. Of course, the rules for the Wrath of the Gods apply to this pray test roll too, so be careful. I was just trying to remove some sin points. Didn't realize I'd piss you off. Sorry. Incense was on sale. Some Wrath of the Gods results actually require that the character pay penance for his or her actions. Example of common penances are given with each cult's description. However, the GM is encouraged to take liberties with how the requirement is actually delivered to the character. Some examples might be prophetic dreams, ghostly visions, a voice from the clouds, or even counseling from a powerful figure within the cult. Whatever the vehicle, this should represent a dramatic point in the character's life and roleplay to its fullest. Blessings are lesser manifestations of a god's will. A character with the blessed talent receives all 6 blessings listed for their cult on page 220 of the core rules. So, for example, a blessed follower of More would receive breath, courage, fortune, righteousness, tenacity, and wisdom. The description for each blessing can be found on page 221. When using blessings, GMs are encouraged to remember they are supposed to be minor, so no real detectable manifestation of the god occurs when they're being used. Miracles, on the other hand, are a little bit bigger a deal. A list of each cult's miracles can be found beginning on page 222, with details including range, number of targets, and special effects. For every 2 success levels with the pray test used to invoke a miracle, you may choose to add further range, more targets, or duration. Also, some miracles have very special options that you may spend your success level to trigger. Each invocation of a miracle comes with some manifestation that makes the god's presence very clear. GM should make sure to play those up and consider how they may affect other party members' perspective and really villains alike. Time for an optional rule. This one's called Petty Concerns, and I think it is really important for maintaining the balance with the whole miracles and blessings thing. Having direct access to a god's will is a privilege, and it's one that should be used sparingly. Petty Concern says that if a character uses the same blessing or miracle in the same scene, on the same injury, or on the same target, that he or she may actually anger the god and result in 1 to 3 sin points. This may seem a little bit harsh, but let's remember that this is in fact Warhammer, and it really wouldn't do to have a bunch of glowing priests wandering around shooting heal beams every other round. People are supposed to get chopped up and murdered and burnt and, all that. All right, you are now up to speed with the glorious religions of the old world, including blessings and miracles, and the perils of sin in the eyes of the wrathful gods. Next up, we will delve into the magic system in Warhammer Fantasy, where you will learn things like and colors and winds and all that kind of stuff. Thanks again for watching, and please go ahead and click that subscribe button below. Click the bell to stay up to date with all of our RPG shenanigans. Also, we would love your feedback in the comments below. Are there areas of the Warhammer Fantasy rule set that you'd like to explore further? Is there another title that you would like us to tackle with Rule Bites? Is there something entirely different that you'd like to talk about? Please let us know, because your feedback is fuel for improving the channel. Lastly, go ahead and just bash that like button and help us defeat the evil power that is the YouTube algorithm. Until next time, may all of your pray tests attract the favor of whatever god, goddess, angel, demon, toadstool, or a head of lettuce you favor. And watch those sin points, okay?